Hey everybody, so today we are going to be kicking off a brand new mini-series where we're trying to answer that age-old question. How do you monetize or get more ROI on your knowledge graph? So I'm kicking this series off with outside of what a lot of people are talking about, which is, graph rag, basically, and semantic layer stuff for internal use cases. Let's talk about what you can do with external uses of graph data and why people might be interested in this. And stay tuned for the second video where we will go through and then what in your graph might be a good candidate for this, because that's the second piece to the puzzle. All right, so with all of that preamble out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. Why are more people looking for data, and specifically structured data, for a lot of different use cases out there? Because that's your buyer, right? So if you're trying to get your graph data or whatever it is that you package from your graph data, because remember, you don't necessarily need to sell the graph itself. This is the first thing that your stakeholders are going to ask. Why would anybody care about this at all? So if you look around, there are a lot of places to buy data. And these are data marketplaces. So AWS has one, Databricks, Snowflake, there's a few of them out there. Google Papers with Code, even, I guess you could, Kaggle's got some stuff. There's a lot of data sets that are kind of floating around out there. And not all of them you have to pay for, right? Like Wikidata, if you're using it for non-commercial, you can use that. If you do need to use it for commercial, then you have to pay for it. So make sure that you look at the usage agreements for these things. But a lot of people are looking for data because we are more obsessed with data than we ever have before, whether we know it or not. You as a person have data. When you are trying to assess what's the best new car, you're looking at data. If you're trying to assess, how do I put this carburetor together this way or that way, or, are there different methods to, doing something in Claude, whatever it is, you're doing assessment of something. We're working with data constantly. And having so much AI in front of us at all times is making that first and foremost. They are more willing to pay for what they need. This is great for us in the knowledge graph space. We have huge stockpiles of trusted, structured, mostly validated, I don't want to say all of it's validated, mostly validated, entity resolved data. This is way better than what you get from just unstructured data. And so the best way to think about this is whatever your industry is. Maybe you're in manufacturing, maybe you're in insurance, banking, whatever it might be. You have specific data that if an end user would be interested in that data, again, you got to make sure you are able to make this available to them too, then they should be able to access it for a price, right? So if you're adding value, you've resolved it, it's verified, it's well structured, it's the most complete of whatever, that's all how you measure it, right? That is a value proposition. So the next time one of your stakeholders is asking about this, especially if you're using any knowledge graph internally, that same use case is what people on the outside of your organization also want, or maybe sister organizations. You don't always have to sell to the open web. You can sell to sister societies or other industry people that are in the same space as you. These are now services that you can provide that are based on your knowledge graph. So that's kind of like the setup of this. Before you all freak out, that doesn't mean you give your entire graph. You can have services on your graph that are consuming the graph to then send out maybe resolved entities, maybe fact verification flags, what evidence cards. Like there's a lot of trend analysis. There's a lot of things that you can put on top of your knowledge graph that you can sell instead of just the knowledge graph pieces themselves. So before you're like, Ashleigh, I can't do this. My graph is really unique and I don't want to sell the whole thing. Valid. Don't sell the whole thing, although that is a different business model. It has a description of the type of data that you have, uniqueness, completeness, verified, authoritative, whatever it might be. And it doesn't even have to be the biggest data. It's just got to be something that is different and has value, that isn't just like, I scraped this from something. This is your value proposition, and it can be very small, but very mighty. That's what they're also going to be looking for. They have people that are, it's like data acquisitions, right? That's what they're looking for. They're looking for data that's going to help support whatever they're doing. Or if they don't want to deal with making and maintaining that data themselves, maybe they just want to hire somebody. That's a age-old business, right? I remember there used to be a company called Wand that sold entire taxonomies that were like base taxonomies that you could build off of. I mean, same principle with this. Governance. So your graph data is most likely governed in some way. So it has some kind of checks and protocols in place. It, again, maybe has validation flags. It's got maybe time series in it for when this thing was valid versus when it's not. And by the way, even if you're not doing context graph, maybe you have a scope note or historical note or something of that nature in your graph data. That is important. And then if you're using something like Shackle or Swirl or some of those other ones, that's something that a plain data set, a database of some sort, or unstructured data does not have. So the selling point here to your stakeholders is our data is valuable because it's governed. If someone is calling into our knowledge graph service, they're getting a specific, precise thing rather than something that is just similar, which is what a vector similarity score does. So right then and there, that is exactly what a knowledge graph has been doing for decades. In general, that's what a knowledge graph does. It's even more valuable now to make sure that you are giving the most precise answer, entity, composition, sequence, whatever it is that your graph is doing. That's a selling point. And along those same veins is the next one in the list, and that is provenance. Where did this data come from? Who owns this data? Do you specifically, as a company, have the rights to sell that thing? Or depending on who you're selling it to, do they have the rights to use it? So this provenance has always been baked into how a knowledge graph works. Maybe that customer says, actually, I can't use any data that originated from this country, or I can't use any data that hasn't been certified for sensitive people groups, whatever. There's a lot of different things. Has it been validated? Yes or no? Did this data get scraped from the open web? Or did you have the rights to use it? Was there any compromised data in there? Like, these are the things that you need provenance for. If you don't know where something came from, it still might be perfectly legitimate and quote unquote safe. But if I can't validate that, then it's a risk because I just don't know. And so having that provenance data is incredibly valuable. So if you're sitting here and thinking, Ashleigh, I don't really know if I have all that. That's okay. You can start to understand what your data does well now and start to sell based on those elements that we're going over right now that you do cover, and things that you are like, oh, that actually is a good idea. Maybe we should do that. This is something that you can try out with the data you have already, see how much revenue starts to come in from it. Because you can just package this up, small data set, right? And as long as you are very clear in what the data covers and what it doesn't cover, that's where you're going to start to learn as people use it. Everybody is talking about token optimization, right? What better way to do token optimization than making inference on structured data that's validated? It is put into the proper sequence, all of these different things. There is a debate. We're not going to go into debate here, but the loops versus knowledge graph. Loops. AI just keeps coming back and back and back and back until it like refines and refines and refines and refines till it gets to the right thing. You're paying for that. You're paying for that. That still might be like super useful and valid for specific use cases. But I hope you know how much you're paying for. When you have a knowledge graph, and again, like you can use agentic retrieval processes here where you can use graph and unstructured and do a lot of agent loops and stuff. Like it's not one or the other. It's probably a combination of all of these things. So let's not flatten it too much like the AI would have done. So I'm not doing that. But what I am saying is if you have a really simple answer, just look it up in your knowledge graph, right? The knowledge graph, because it is a graph, allows you to do multi-hop inferencing, like lots of different ways that you can use the graph logic, which is a much lower price point than the AI's inferencing cost. So switch it up. Make it a lookup problem, not a generation problem. That also decreases your hallucinations, by the way, is multi-entity. So there's a lot of research that is now showing that when you get over a threshold of way too many entities, so like between 5 and 7 entities in a prompt, the AI gets a little confused when it only has a vector database to go off of, because the way that a vector database works, and I'll put a little thing here on like how the vectors work, right? Like you're vectoring in on a specific item. So if you have 2 items, it's easier to find the vector for this. If you have 3, well, I can't there. 3. If you have 4, right? So you can see like the more vectors you have, the harder it is to find the vector that connects them all. And that's how an LLM works. So if you are using vector similarity, you are now adding a lot of noise with the amount of entities that you're adding into the prompt. So that's where knowledge graph really shines, because you, instead of looking up all the different entities that could mean that thing, you have the entity that you resolve to, or maybe like 2 or 3 entities if they're highly ambiguous entities, right? That's where you have more precision because you have graph that has entities in it that you can resolve to. The graph also has a lot of structured data that has been verified and structured with rules and governance if you're using an ontology, where, you know what, this person has a birth date and you can only have one birth date. So this other person who might be the same person, if I'm trying to resolve to it, they also have a birth date. So if a human person is only allowed to have one birth date, this entity cannot be both of those people, because that would mean that they would have 2 birth dates, right? That's not even using the entity data. That's using your ontology. Use the graph for what it's already good for. Like everything I just went through with what the graph is, the selling points of the graph, that's what a graph does. Like, while the AI can figure those things out too, AI is very powerful. The question is, do you want to pay for that? And are you going to then trust it, or do you have to go in and do a bunch of additional validation checks on it, which you could have just did on the graph and be done with it? So these are the major selling points. And if you're like, man, Ashleigh, that's great, but like all the graph data I have is like, we don't want to give it away to our competitors or whatever it is. Okay, valid. But that's where knowing what is in your graph is going to help you. That's what we're going to talk about in video number 2. Because you may not realize how valuable some of the stuff is in your graph that you're just like, yeah, that's there. It's incredibly valuable to somebody else. And we're going to talk about some of that. And that's the teaser for the next video. I did a little bit of teaser throughout this video because these all kind of hang together if you're trying to create this narrative for yourself. All right, so that is a wrap for this first video. Make sure you are subscribed. I don't usually say that, but if I have sequences of mini-series like this and you're not following along, you're maybe going to miss some. So in this series specifically, I think it's going to be a really big deal. At least I think so. All right, so with that, I want to thank you very much, and I'll catch you next time.